Begin Purpose Podcast, Episode 14, Protecting Purpose in a Noisy Life. How to stay clear when everything is competing for your attention. Welcome back to the Begin Purpose Podcast. In our last episode, we talked about purpose in ordinary days. We explored the idea that purpose is not only found in dramatic turning points, major decisions, big launches, or life-changing moments. Purpose is also practiced in kitchens, offices, cars, quiet conversations, daily routines, small acts of patience, and private choices no one else sees. We talked about the importance of bringing intention into the real day we have, not only the ideal day we imagine. Today, I want to continue that conversation by looking at one of the biggest challenges we face when trying to live with purpose: noise. Not only physical noise, although that can be part of it, but emotional noise, digital noise, cultural noise, relational noise, internal noise, and the constant pressure of competing demands. We live in a world where almost everything is trying to get our attention, shape our desires, provoke our emotions, sell us urgency, and pull us away from the deeper work of becoming. If we are not careful, our lives can become so loud that purpose becomes hard to hear. This episode is called Protecting Purpose in a Noisy Life, because purpose does not only need to be discovered, it needs to be protected. That may sound strange at first. We often think that if something is truly important, it should naturally remain important. We think that once we know what matters, we will automatically live from it. But life does not work that way. Clarity can fade under pressure. Values can get buried beneath urgency. Good intentions can be swallowed by full calendars. A meaningful direction can be drowned out by constant comparison, distraction, worry, and other people's expectations. Purpose may be strong, but our attention is still vulnerable. Attention is one of the most valuable things we have because attention is the doorway to direction. What we give attention to begins to shape what we think about. What we think about begins to shape what we desire, fear, resent, pursue, and believe is possible. Over time, attention trains identity. If our attention is constantly scattered, our lives often feel scattered. If our attention is constantly pulled toward comparison, our lives begin to feel behind. If our attention is constantly fed outrage, our inner world becomes reactive. If our attention is constantly consumed by other people's priorities, our own purpose becomes faint. This is why protecting attention is not a small matter. It is part of protecting purpose. Many people do not lose purpose because they reject it. They lose touch with purpose because they become overstimulated, overcommitted, overinformed, and underreflected. They are not necessarily choosing a meaningless life. They are simply living in a way that leaves almost no room for meaning to be heard. The day begins with the phone, moves into demands, fills with tasks, absorbs other people's emergencies, ends with exhaustion, and then repeats. Somewhere inside, the person still cares. They still want a meaningful life. They still sense that something deeper is calling, but the noise keeps winning. The difficult thing about noise is that it often disguises itself as importance. Every message feels urgent. Every notification feels like it needs a response. Every opportunity feels like it might be missed if we do not act immediately. Every opinion online feels like something we should know. Every comparison feels like useful information. Every request from someone else feels like a test of whether we are good, helpful, responsible, or available. Noise does not always announce itself as distraction. Sometimes it arrives wearing the clothes of responsibility. That is why we need discernment. Not everything loud is important. Not everything urgent is meaningful. Not everything demanding your attention deserves your attention. Not every open door is your door. Not every opinion is a message you need to carry. Not every crisis belongs in the center of your life. A purposeful life requires the ability to pause and ask, does this deserve the amount of attention it is asking from me? That question alone can begin to change a life. There is a phrase I have been thinking about. If everything gets access to your attention, nothing important gets protected. That is the danger of a noisy life. It does not always destroy us through one major decision. It slowly trains us to live unguarded. We become available to everything and anchored to very little. We become informed about many things, but deeply connected to few things. We become responsive, but not reflective. Busy, but not aligned. Productive, but not always purposeful. Protecting purpose begins with admitting that our attention has limits. We cannot care about everything with the same intensity. We cannot respond to every demand with the same level of urgency. We cannot build a meaningful life while leaving the door of our mind open to every interruption. A healthy life requires boundaries, and one of the most important boundaries is the boundary around attention. This does not mean becoming selfish, detached, or indifferent. It means becoming responsible with the limited energy and focus we have been given. Purposeful people are not people who ignore the world. They are people who learn how to engage the world without being consumed by every noise within it. Think about how easily a day can be taken over. You wake up with a meaningful intention. Maybe you want to write, pray, exercise, plan, create, study, or spend focused time with someone you love. But before that intention gets any real space, you check one notification. That leads to another message, then a news story, then a social feed, then a comparison, then a worry, then an emotional reaction. Within minutes, your mind is no longer in the day you intended to live. It is scattered across other people's opinions, emergencies, achievements, and conflicts. Nothing physically stopped you from living on purpose, but your attention was redirected before your purpose had a chance to take root. This is why the first moments of the day matter, not because everyone needs a perfect morning routine, but because the beginning of the day often sets the direction of our attention. If the world gets first access to your mind every morning, it may also get first influence over your emotions, priorities, and posture. But if you create even a small space before the noise enters, you give purpose a chance to speak first. That space does not have to be elaborate. It may be 3 minutes of quiet, one prayer, a short reflection, reading a few meaningful lines, writing down the one thing that matters most today, asking, who am I today, and how will I pursue purpose today? The goal is not ritual for the sake of ritual. Before the world tells you who to be, you give your values a voice. Protecting purpose also requires learning to say no, not only to bad things, but to good things that are not aligned for this season. This can be difficult because good opportunities often create the most confusion. It is usually easier to reject what is clearly harmful. The harder decisions involve things that are good, interesting, flattering, helpful, or socially expected, but still not yours to carry right now. A noisy life is often built from too many unexamined yeses. We say yes to the meeting because we do not want to disappoint. Yes to the project because we like being needed. Yes to the event because we fear being left out. Yes to the request because we are uncomfortable with someone else's discomfort. Yes to the opportunity because it makes us feel validated. Yes to the habit because it gives short-term relief. Yes to the distraction because it asks less of us than the purposeful work does. And then we wonder why there is no room left for what we claim matters most. Every yes spends something. It spends time, attention, energy, emotion, and sometimes identity. That does not make yes bad. A meaningful life includes generous yeses. But a purposeful yes should be given with awareness of what it costs. If we do not count the cost, we may unknowingly spend the best of ourselves on things that do not align with who we are becoming. This is why no can be an act of purpose. No can protect the yes that matters. No can protect health, family, peace, focus, creativity, faith, service, and calling. No can be the fence around a life that would otherwise be trampled by every demand. No does not have to be harsh. It can be honest. It can be respectful. I cannot take that on right now. That does not fit this season. I need to protect that time. I am not available for this. These sentences may feel uncomfortable if you have built your identity around being endlessly accessible, but they may also be necessary for alignment. There is also the noise of comparison. This may be one of the most subtle and damaging forms of noise because it often feels like research or inspiration. We look at what others are doing to learn, to study, to improve. There is nothing wrong with learning from others, but comparison becomes dangerous when another person's path begins to make us resent our own. We see someone else's progress and assume we are behind. We see their visibility and question our worth. We see their clarity and judge our process. We see their success and begin to rush, imitate, or abandon what is actually ours. Comparison makes purpose noisy because it introduces too many voices into the question of direction. Instead of asking, "What is mine to do?" we begin asking, "How do I catch up to them?" That question can pull us away from alignment. It can make us chase strategies that do not fit, timelines that are not ours, and definitions of success that do not reflect our values. One of the healthiest questions we can ask when comparison rises is, what is this revealing? Sometimes comparison reveals desire. It shows us something we care about. Sometimes it reveals insecurity. It exposes an old belief that we are behind or not enough. Sometimes it reveals distraction. It shows that we have been watching more than building. If we can examine comparison instead of obeying it, it can become information rather than a master. Purpose needs enough quiet for your own life to become audible again. That does not mean silence all the time. It means creating spaces where you can hear your thoughts without immediately borrowing someone else's. It means allowing your values to speak louder than trends. It means trusting that your pace, your season, your assignment, and your formation may not look exactly like someone else's. It means returning to the question, what is mine to do today? Another form of noise is emotional clutter. Unresolved resentment, fear, guilt, shame, and anxiety can become a constant background hum. Even when the room is quiet, the inner world feels loud. You may sit down to focus, but your mind keeps replaying a conversation. You may try to rest, but guilt tells you that you should be doing more. You may try to create, but shame reminds you of past failure. You may try to decide, but fear fills every option with danger. Protecting purpose sometimes requires tending the emotional noise we carry. That may involve journaling, prayer, counseling, coaching, honest conversation, forgiveness, boundaries, grief work, or simply naming what has been unnamed. Purpose does not require an emotionless life, but it does require enough inner honesty that our unprocessed emotions do not secretly direct everything. For example, if guilt is constantly driving your decisions, you may call it service when it is actually fear of disappointing people. If resentment is constantly present, you may call it responsibility when it is actually overextension. If shame is constantly loud, you may call it humility when it is actually self-erasure. If anxiety is constantly steering, you may call it wisdom when it is actually avoidance. Emotional noise can rename itself in ways that sound noble. That is why reflection matters. The goal is not to eliminate every difficult emotion. The goal is to stop letting unexamined emotion become the hidden manager of your life. Protecting purpose also means protecting deep work. Deep work is the focused effort required to build, create, heal, learn, think, and become in meaningful ways. It is the kind of work that cannot be done well while constantly interrupted. Purposeful work often requires depth. Writing requires depth. Prayer often requires depth. Healing requires depth. Strategy requires depth. Learning requires depth. Relationships require depth. Even rest requires depth if it is going to restore us rather than merely distract us. But depth is difficult in a noisy life. We are trained to switch, skim, react, and check. We become uncomfortable with sustained attention. We feel restless when nothing is happening quickly. We may even start avoiding meaningful work because meaningful work asks more from us than distraction does. Distraction is easy because it does not require us to face uncertainty, difficulty, or the possibility of failure. Deep work does. If purpose matters, we have to give it protected time, not leftover time, not imaginary time, protected time. This may be a small amount at first, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 1 hour a week, a recurring block, a quiet evening, a morning space. The size matters less than the protection. When you protect time for purpose, you are making a statement. This matters enough to have a place in my life. Some people resist this because they feel selfish protecting time for what matters to them. But purpose is not selfish when it is aligned. The work being formed in you may eventually serve others. The clarity you gain may strengthen your family. The health you protect may allow you to love better. The creativity you cultivate may encourage someone else. The faith you nurture may make you steadier in difficulty. Protecting purpose is not only for you, it may be part of how you become more useful, present, and alive for others. There is also a need to protect purpose from perfectionism. Perfectionism is a very loud internal noise. It says, do not start until it is flawless. Do not share until no one can criticize it. Do not act until you can guarantee success. Do not be seen until you are polished. Perfectionism sounds like high standards, but often it is fear in formal clothing. It keeps purpose in preparation forever. Purpose needs room to be practiced imperfectly. The first draft may be rough. The first conversation may be awkward. The first attempt may need adjustment. The first step may not feel confident. That does not mean it is not meaningful. If perfection is required before purpose can move, purpose will remain trapped. Protecting purpose means refusing to let perfectionism become the gatekeeper of action. This does not mean we stop caring about quality. Quality matters. Excellence matters. Responsibility matters. But excellence grows through practice. Perfectionism prevents practice. Excellence says, I will keep improving. Perfectionism says, I must not be seen until improvement is unnecessary. One leads to growth, the other leads to hiding. As you think about protecting your purpose, I want you to consider the main sources of noise in your life right now. I'm really glad you shared those reflections. Naming the noise and choosing a single purposeful boundary can make a big difference in creating that protected space for what matters to you. When you do pick that one boundary and hold it this week, noticing how it feels and what shifts for you will show you a lot about your own needs and rhythms. Just that one intentional step could have a ripple effect toward more clarity and calm. Notice the resistance. Notice the space that opens. Notice what purpose begins to say when the noise gets a little quieter. Purpose does not usually shout over everything else. It often speaks in a steadier voice. It requires us to listen. It requires us to protect the conditions where listening is possible. In a noisy life, that protection is not optional. It is part of the work. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Begin Purpose podcast. In our next episode, we will continue this journey by exploring what it means to live with a renewed identity, not as a temporary project, but as a way of walking forward with greater clarity, responsibility, and hope. Until then, remember this: not everything that demands your attention deserves your direction. Protect the space where purpose can grow. This is Begin Purpose, and today is a good day to turn down the noise and listen for what matters.